The stars blurred into white lines as Daesung's cargo ship shook violently. Red lights flashed across the cockpit. Warning sounds screamed in his ears. Something was very wrong with the navigation system. He slammed his hand on the control panel trying to fix it, but nothing worked. The ship spun out of control. No, Daesung muttered, pulling hard on the steering controls. The ship wouldn't listen. It pulled him toward a planet he didn't recognize. A planet that wasn't supposed to be there. The purple sky grew bigger in his window. Rocky mountains came closer. Daesung braced himself as the ship hit the ground. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. His head hit something hard. Then everything went black. When Daesung opened his eyes, smoke filled the cockpit. His head pounded. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye. He touched his ribs and winced. Broken, probably. He unbuckled his safety belt and crawled toward the broken door. Every movement hurt. Outside, the world looked alien. The sky was violet, not blue. The rocks around him were clear like glass, reflecting light in strange colors. 2 suns hung in the sky, one large and orange, one small and white. The air smelled sweet and metallic at the same time. Daesung pulled himself out of the wreckage and collapsed on the ground. He tried to stand, but his leg gave out. Pain shot through his body. He looked at his ship. It was destroyed. Half of it was buried in the crystalline rocks. No way it would fly again. Great, he said to the empty landscape. Just great. He needed to find shelter, food, water, medical supplies from the ship if any survived. But first he needed to stop his leg from bleeding. He tore a piece of cloth from his jacket and wrapped it around the wound. It wasn't good, but it would work for now. Daesung heard a sound behind him, a soft humming like wind through metal tubes. He turned his head slowly, fear creeping up his spine. Something moved between the crystal rocks, something tall. A figure stepped into view and Daesung's breath caught in his throat. It was definitely not human. The being stood at least 7 feet tall. Her skin was smooth and changed colors, shifting from pale blue to soft purple like oil on water. She had 4 arms, 2 on each side of her body. Her face was almost human-like but longer, with large eyes that had no white in them, just deep violet with silver flecks. She wore simple robes that moved even though there was no wind. Daesung tried to push himself backward, but pain stopped him. The alien woman didn't move closer. She just watched him. Her expression was calm, curious, but not threatening. She tilted her head slightly, studying him like he was an interesting puzzle. "Stay back," Daesung said, though his voice was weak. He knew she probably couldn't understand him. "I don't want trouble." The alien woman made a soft sound like music mixed with words he couldn't understand. Her voice was gentle. She took 1 step forward, then stopped, waiting. Her 4 hands moved slowly, palms up in what might be a gesture of peace. Daesung didn't have many choices. He was injured, alone, on a planet he didn't know. His ship was destroyed. If this alien wanted to hurt him, she could do it easily. But something in her eyes didn't look dangerous. She looked sad, actually. Very sad. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay." The alien woman moved closer carefully, like approaching a scared animal. When she reached him, she knelt down. Up close, Daesung could see more details. Her iridescent skin had patterns that moved slowly across it like living tattoos. Her robes were woven from something that caught light and held it. She smelled like rain and something sweet he couldn't name. She reached out with 1 hand toward his injured leg. Daesung tensed but didn't pull away. Her fingers touched the wound gently. She made another musical sound, this one sad. Then she gestured toward the horizon with 2 of her other hands. Daesung looked where she pointed. In the distance, built into the side of a massive cliff, he could see a structure. It blended so well with the rock that he almost missed it. Parts of it glowed softly. "Your home?" he asked. The alien woman stood and offered him 2 of her hands. Daesung stared at them for a moment. Then, with great effort, he took them. Her skin was warm and smooth. She lifted him easily, taking most of his weight. She was incredibly strong. They moved slowly across the crystal landscape. Daesung limped badly, and every step hurt. The alien woman was patient. She adjusted her pace to match his. When he stumbled, she caught him with her other arms. She hummed that musical sound again as they walked. It was almost comforting. The walk felt endless. The 2 suns beat down on them. Daesung's throat was dry. His vision blurred a few times. But the alien woman kept him moving, kept him on his feet. She would stop when he needed to rest, never rushing him. Finally, they reached the cliff dwelling. Up close, it was beautiful in a strange way. The structure seemed to grow out of the rock itself. all flowing curves and smooth surfaces. No sharp edges anywhere. Lights pulsed gently inside, blue and green and soft white. Plants grew around the entrance, plants unlike any Daesung had seen. They glowed faintly and moved on their own, reaching toward him as he passed. The alien woman led him through the entrance. Inside was cool and dim. The walls curved around them. More of those glowing plants grew from the floor and ceiling, providing light. The furniture was odd-shaped but looked comfortable. Everything flowed together like the whole place was one living thing. She helped Daesung to a low platform covered in soft material. He collapsed onto it gratefully. His body screamed with pain. The alien woman made a concerned sound and moved away quickly. She returned moments later with containers and tools he didn't recognize. Daesung wanted to ask questions. Who was she? Why did she live alone? Would she help him? But he was too tired, too hurt. He watched as she opened containers and began treating his wounds. Her 4 hands moved with practiced skill. She cleaned the cut on his head. She felt his ribs carefully, then wrapped them with something that hardened slightly, holding them in place. She treated his leg wound with a paste that stung at first, then went blissfully numb. Through it all, she hummed that musical sound. Daesung felt his eyes growing heavy. The pain was fading. Whatever she put on his wounds was working. He tried to stay awake, to stay alert, but his body had other ideas. "Thank you," he whispered as sleep took him. The alien woman looked at his face. She reached out with one hand and gently touched his forehead. Her expression was still sad, so very sad, but there was something else there too. Something like recognition, like she understood what it meant to be alone and broken. She covered him with a soft blanket and sat nearby, watching him sleep. Outside, the 2 suns set slowly, painting the violet sky in shades of orange and red. And in the quiet dwelling built into the cliff, a human and an alien shared space for the first time, neither knowing what the morning would bring. Daesung woke to soft blue light. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then the memories came back. The crash. The alien woman, her home. He sat up slowly, expecting pain, but felt only a dull ache. Whatever medicine she had used worked incredibly well. He looked around the room. The walls glowed gently with bioluminescent plants. They pulsed like slow heartbeats. The ceiling curved high above him, smooth as river stone. In one corner, water trickled down the wall into a small pool. The sound was peaceful. The alien woman sat across the room, her back to him. She was doing something with her hands, weaving or crafting. All 4 of her arms moved in a complex pattern. She made soft musical sounds as she worked, almost like singing. "Hello?" Daesung said quietly. She turned immediately. Her large violet eyes studied him. Then she stood and approached with a container in 2 of her hands. She gestured for him to drink. Daesung took the container carefully. The liquid inside was pale green and smelled like flowers. He hesitated. What if it was poisonous to humans? But she had saved his life already. If she wanted him dead, he would be dead. He took a small sip. The taste was sweet and clean. It felt cool going down his throat. His headache faded almost immediately. He drank more, suddenly realizing how thirsty he was. The alien woman made an approving sound. She checked his injuries next, unwrapping his leg to examine the wound. It looked much better. The paste had formed a protective layer over it. She touched it gently with one finger, then nodded to herself. She seemed satisfied. "Thank you," Daesung said. He pointed to himself. "Daesung!" "My name is Daesung." The alien woman tilted her head. She pointed to him and made a questioning sound. "Daesung," he repeated, tapping his chest. She understood. She pointed to herself and said something in her musical language. It sounded like Velmora, but with extra tones he couldn't quite copy. "Velmora?" He tried. She made a sound that might have been agreement. Close enough, apparently. Over the next few days, Daesung learned about his new home. Velmora's dwelling was bigger than it first appeared. Rooms branched off from the main space, each serving a different purpose. There was a room filled with growing plants, all glowing softly. Another room held what looked like art or maybe historical records, images carved into stone tablets. A third room was clearly for sleeping, with platforms covered in soft materials. But one room made Daesung stop. It was small and dark. Inside, objects were arranged carefully on shelves. A piece of cloth, a tool of some kind, small carved figures. In the center, 2 larger carvings stood. One showed an alien similar to Velmora, The other showed a smaller being, child-sized. Both carvings were surrounded by dried flowers and glowing stones. Daesung realized what he was looking at. These were memorials. These were people Velmora had lost. He heard her behind him and turned. She stood in the doorway, all four arms held close to her body. Her expression was difficult to read, but her eyes looked ancient with grief. "I'm sorry," Daesung said softly. "I didn't mean to intrude." Velmora didn't seem angry. She entered the room and touched the larger carving with one hand. She made a long, sad musical sound. Then she touched the smaller carving. Her whole body seemed to droop. Daesung understood. He didn't need words. She had lost her partner and child, and now she lived here alone, keeping their memory alive. "I'm so sorry," he said again. Velmora looked at him for a long moment. Then she gestured for him to leave the room. Not angrily, just clearly. This was her private space. Daesung respected that. Life settled into a routine. Each morning, Velmora brought him that green drink. She changed his bandages. She brought him food, strange fruits, and cooked vegetables that tasted nothing like earth food but filled his stomach. She was always gentle, always careful, but also distant, like she was going through motions she had done 1,000 times before. Daesung tried to help. He couldn't walk well yet, but he could use his hands. When Velmora brought him materials, he helped her weave. He learned her patterns, copying the way her fingers moved. She seemed surprised at first, then pleased. She showed him more complex designs. He learned that she cooked in a strange device that heated food without fire. He watched her prepare meals, and eventually, she let him help cut vegetables with a tool she provided. The vegetables were tough, purple and orange things with thick skin. But working together made the task faster. Every evening, Velmora would go outside. Daesung watched from the entrance. She walked to a spot near the cliff edge where more of those memorial stones stood. She would sit there for an hour, not moving, just watching the two suns set. Her forearms would rest in her lap. Sometimes she made those musical sounds, songs maybe, or prayers. Daesung never interrupted these moments. They were hers. But one evening, after she came back inside, he noticed her moving more slowly than usual. Her skin color was duller. She went to her sleeping room without eating. The next morning, she didn't come to check on him. Daesung waited, worried. Finally, he stood carefully. His leg hurt but held his weight. He walked slowly through the dwelling, searching for her. He found her in the plant room, collapsed on the floor. Her skin was very pale. Her eyes were closed. Velmora. Daesung dropped beside her. He touched her shoulder carefully. She was burning hot. Her eyes opened slowly. She made a weak sound. She tried to stand but couldn't. Daesung felt panic rising. She had saved him. Now she needed help, and he had no idea what to do. He didn't know alien medicine. He didn't know what she needed, but he could try. He could do something. He went to the room where she kept her medical supplies. He brought back containers, hoping one would help. He brought her water. He dampened a cloth and put it on her forehead to cool her fever. Velmora's eyes tracked him. She seemed confused that he was helping her, like she had forgotten what it was like to be cared for. Daesung stayed with her all day. He brought her food and water. He kept the cool cloth on her head. When her fever seemed worse, he remembered the glowing plants. Some of them must have healing properties. He carefully picked leaves from several plants, crushed them like he had seen her do, and mixed them with water. He offered the mixture to her. Velmora looked at it, then at him. She drank it slowly. By evening, her color improved. Her eyes looked clearer. She sat up slowly, and Daesung helped her to a more comfortable position. She looked at him with something like wonder in her eyes. "It's okay," Daesung said gently. "You helped me. I help you. That's how it works." Velmora reached out with one hand and touched his face. Her fingers were gentle. She made a soft sound, questioning. Daesung understood what she was asking. Why? Why help her when she was just a stranger? When he was stranded here? When he had his own problems? "Because you're not alone anymore," he said. "And neither am I." Something changed in her expression. The deep sadness was still there, but something else appeared too. Something like hope, fragile and new. That night, for the first time since Daesung arrived, Velmora didn't sit alone at the memorial stones. She stayed inside. And when she prepared the evening meal, she made enough for 2 people. She set the portions out carefully side by side. They ate together in comfortable silence. The glowing plants pulsed around them. Water trickled down the wall. Outside, the two suns set over the crystal landscape. Daesung didn't have words for what was happening between them. They couldn't speak each other's languages. They came from different worlds, different species. But something was growing in this quiet dwelling. Some understanding that went deeper than words. Velomora made that musical sound again, but this time it didn't sound as sad. It sounded almost peaceful. And Daesung smiled, thinking that maybe being stranded here wasn't the worst thing that could have happened after all. 2 weeks passed in Velmora's home. Daesung's injuries healed well. He could walk without limping now. The cut on his head left only a small scar. His ribs still ached sometimes, but the pain was manageable. Each morning started the same way. Velmora would prepare that green drink. They would eat breakfast together. Then they would work. Daesung discovered that Velmora maintained a garden outside. It was hidden behind the cliff dwelling, protected from the harsh winds. The plants there were different from the ones inside. These were for eating. Strange vegetables and fruits grew in neat rows. Some plants had leaves that caught and held water. Others had roots that glowed underground, visible through the translucent soil. The first time Velmora led him to the garden, Daesung was amazed. In the middle of this harsh, empty planet, she had created life. Color. Growth. She handed him a tool, something like a rake but with flexible prongs. She showed him how to turn the soil gently, careful not to damage the roots. Her forehands moved quickly, efficiently. She had done this countless times. Daesung worked beside her. The soil was strange, purple-gray and fine like sand. But it was rich. Plants grew strong in it. He learned which plants needed more water, which needed shade from the two suns. He learned to recognize pests, small flying things that tried to eat the leaves. Velomora would shoo them away with gentle waves of her hands. Working together felt natural. They developed a rhythm. Velomora would dig and Daesung would plant. She would water while he cleared dead leaves. They didn't need words. Their movements spoke for them. During breaks, they would sit at the edge of the garden. Velomora would bring fruit, sweet purple things that tasted like berries. She would peel them with 2 hands while her other 2 rested. Daesung learned to copy her, working with the unfamiliar texture. One afternoon, Daesung tried to teach her a human word. He pointed to the sky and said, "Sky, blue sky." "Well, purple sky here." Velmora tilted her head. She pointed up and made her own sound, musical and flowing. "Sky," Daesung repeated. He pointed to the ground. "Ground, dirt, soil." She said her word for it. Then carefully she tried his word. "Sky?" "Yes, sky." Daesung grinned. "You've got it." Velmora made a sound that might have been laughter. It was bright and quick. Daesung had never heard her make that sound before. It made him happy. They continued the game, rock, plant, water, sun. Each word was a small bridge between their worlds. Velmora was a quick learner. She remembered everything he taught her, and she taught him her words too, though his mouth struggled with the musical tones. In the evenings, Velmora still went to the memorial stones. But now sometimes she would gesture for Daesung to come with her. He would sit nearby, not too close, giving her space. They would watch the sunset together in silence. One evening, she began to tell him a story. At least that's what it seemed like. She made long, flowing sounds. She pointed to the memorial stones, to the sky, to herself. Her forearms moved in gestures that seemed to paint pictures in the air. Daesung didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling. She was telling him about the people she lost, the life she had before, the family that was gone. When she finished, her skin had turned a darker shade of blue. Her way of showing sadness, Daesung realized. He wanted to comfort her but didn't know how. Instead, he started talking too. "I had someone once," he said quietly. "Her name was Heejin. We were going to get married, but she got sick. Really sick. The doctors tried everything, but nothing worked." Velmora watched him. She didn't understand his words, but she listened. "I became a pilot to escape, I think, to run away from the places that reminded me of her. I took jobs that sent me far away. Dangerous jobs. Jobs nobody else wanted." Daesung looked at his hands. "I guess I didn't care much about what happened to me." He felt Velmora's hand on his shoulder. Just one hand, gentle and warm. She made a soft sound, comforting. "Yeah," Daesung said, "but maybe crashing here was the best thing that could have happened. Maybe I needed to stop running." They sat together as darkness fell. The stars came out. Unfamiliar constellations in the purple-black sky. 2 moons rose, one silver and one pale blue. The crystal rocks around them caught the moonlight and scattered it in 1,000 directions. Days turned into a comfortable pattern. Daesung learned more about the dwelling. He discovered that certain plants in the walls could be touched to change the light levels. He learned that the water flowing down the wall was filtered naturally through the rock, always clean and cool. He found out that the floor stayed warm because thermal vents ran beneath it. Velmora's people were clever builders. Everything in the dwelling had a purpose. Nothing was wasted. One morning, Daesung woke early. He went to the main room and found Velmora already there. She was working on one of her weavings. But this time the pattern was different. It had new colors in it. Blues and whites mixed with her usual purples and greens. She saw him looking and held it up. She pointed to him, then to the weaving. "For me?" Daesung asked. She made an affirmative sound. Her skin rippled with light colors. Happy colors, he had learned. The weaving was beautiful. The pattern showed stars in space with a small ship falling toward a planet. But at the bottom, 2 figures stood together. Different shapes, different sizes, but side by side. "Thank you," Daesung said, touched. "It's beautiful." Velmora handed it to him carefully. He held it like the precious gift it was. This was more than just a craft. This was her way of saying he belonged here. That he wasn't just a guest anymore. That afternoon in the garden, they worked on expanding a section. Velmora wanted to plant new seeds she had stored. The work was hard. They had to clear rocks and prepare the soil. Daesung's muscles ached, sweat dripped down his face, but Velmora worked just as hard. Her 4 arms were an advantage, but she never made him feel useless. When he struggled with a large rock, she would help with 2 arms while her other 2 continued working elsewhere. They were a team. During a water break, something happened. A small animal appeared at the garden's edge. It looked like a lizard but with fur, and it had 6 legs. It watched them with curious eyes. Velmora made a delighted sound. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a piece of fruit. She held it out. The creature approached slowly, sniffed, then took the fruit from her hand. It ate quickly, then ran off. "You feed it?" Daesung asked. Velmora nodded. She made gestures that suggested the creature came often. She had been feeding it for a long time. It was her only companion before Daesung arrived. He felt a pang of sadness. She had been so alone. Completely alone except for a small animal that visited sometimes. How had she survived? How had she kept going? But looking at her now, working in the garden with dirt on her robes and light in her eyes, Daesung saw strength. She hadn't just survived. She had built a life. She had kept her world beautiful even in grief. That took incredible courage. That evening, Daesung asked her something he had been wondering about. He gestured to the dwelling, to the garden, to everything around them. Then he made a questioning sound and spread his arms wide. "Why here? Why stay in this empty place?" Velmora was quiet for a long time. Then she led him to the memorial room. She picked up one of the small carvings and held it gently. She made a long series of sounds. She pointed to the ground, to the walls, to the memorial stones outside. Daesung understood. This place held her family. Maybe they were buried here. Maybe this was where they had lived together. She couldn't leave them. Wouldn't leave them. He nodded slowly. "I understand. Family is important. Memory is important." Velmora looked at him. In her eyes he saw gratitude. Gratitude that he understood. That he didn't try to convince her to leave. That he accepted her choice. She placed the carving back carefully. Then she touched Daesung's hand with one of hers. She led him to another room, one he hadn't explored yet. Inside were more stone tablets covered in carved symbols. She showed him one with images of her people. Tall 4-armed figures in groups, cities built into cliffs, ships that flew among stars. She was showing him her history, her culture, her world. Daesung listened and watched, absorbing everything. He asked questions with gestures, and she answered as best she could. They spent hours there, teacher and student sharing knowledge across the gap between species. When they finally emerged, both moons were high in the sky. Velmora prepared a late meal. They ate together, and for the first time she sat close to him instead of across the room. Not touching, but near. Comfortable. As Daesung lay down to sleep that night, he thought about how much had changed. He had crashed here broken and afraid. Now he felt peaceful, useful, maybe even happy. And Velmora, who had been alone for so long, had someone to share her days with, someone who cared about her garden and her stories, someone who understood that grief didn't have a time limit. Outside, the crystal rocks glowed softly in the moonlight. The wind made music through the formations. And inside the dwelling built into the cliff, two lonely souls found something neither expected: connection. 3 weeks after the crash, Daesung decided it was time to return to his ship. He needed to see what could be salvaged. Communication equipment, emergency supplies, maybe parts that could be useful. Velmora understood when he gestured his intention. She made a concerned sound but nodded. They walked together to the crash site. The wreckage looked worse than Daesung remembered. The metal hull was twisted and broken. Scavenger creatures had already picked through some of the exposed sections. But the main cargo hold seemed intact. Daesung climbed carefully into the wreckage. Velmora waited outside, her forearms crossed in what he now recognized as worry. He called out to reassure her as he worked. Inside, he found his emergency kit. A few ration bars, though they were crushed. A medical scanner that might still work. His communication equipment was damaged but not destroyed. He gathered everything useful into a bag. As he searched, his hand touched something hard. His personal datapad. He pulled it out and activated it. The screen flickered to life. Battery at 15%, but it worked. Daesung scrolled through his files, pictures of Earth, messages from friends, his flight logs, and then he found what he was looking for: the ship's navigation data from before the crash. He examined the coordinates. Something was wrong. This planet showed up on his maps, but it was marked with a red symbol. He zoomed in to read the notation. Quarantine zone, authorized personnel only, biohazard level 5. Daesung's blood ran cold. Quarantine? Biohazard? He kept reading. The entry was dated 8 years ago. A plague had swept through this planet. The native population was devastated. 98% mortality rate. Survivors were evacuated. The planet was sealed off, but Velmora was here. She had stayed. Why? He climbed out of the wreckage carefully, his mind racing. Velmora saw his expression and made a questioning sound. "We need to go back," Daesung said. "I need to understand something." At the dwelling, Daesung activated his datapad. He showed Velmora the screen with its warning symbols. Her skin immediately shifted to dark blue. She made a long, sad sound. She led him to the tablet room. There she pulled out a specific tablet. The carvings on it showed her people falling sick. Cities empty, ships leaving, and one figure staying behind, surrounded by memorial stones. Velmora pointed to herself. She had stayed when everyone else left. She was immune to the plague. Or maybe she had already survived it. Either way, she remained as a caretaker, a keeper of memories. She couldn't abandon her family's graves. Daesung felt his throat tighten. But the danger. "Am I?" Velmora understood his fear. She took his hand and led him to another room he hadn't noticed before. Inside was equipment, medical devices with displays he couldn't read. She pointed to one screen that showed a moving line like a heartbeat. She had been monitoring him. Since the day she brought him here, she had been checking his health, making sure the plague hadn't infected him. Velmora manipulated the device with her skilled hands. A light passed over Daesung, scanning him. Numbers appeared on the screen. She studied them, then made a relieved sound. She showed him the display and made a gesture that clearly meant safe. He wasn't sick. The plague either didn't affect humans, or enough time had passed that it was no longer dangerous. Either way, he was going to be okay. But Daesung felt something else now. Anger on her behalf. "You've been here alone for 8 years? 8 years? Velmora made a soft sound. She showed him more tablets. Images of her partner and child. The plague had taken them. She had been with them at the end. She had buried them with her own hands. How could she leave? Daesung sat down heavily. He understood grief. He understood the need to hold on to memory. But 8 years alone? 8 years of maintaining this place by herself? Talking to no one, caring for gardens and memorials with only a small creature for company? "That's not living," he said quietly. "That's just existing." Velmora looked at him. Her eyes were deep and ancient with sadness. She made a sound that seemed to say, "What else is there?" Over the next few days, Daesung worked on his communication equipment. He spread the components out in one of the rooms. Velmora watched with interest. She didn't understand human technology, but she was curious. He explained what he was doing through gestures. "This sends signals, messages to other humans. Far away," he pointed up at the sky. If I can fix it, I can call for help. Velmora's skin flickered between colors, complex emotions he couldn't quite read, but she helped him anyway. When he needed a tool to reach something, she used her height and forearms to assist. When he needed to test connections, she held components steady. Working together on this new project felt different from gardening. This was human technology, his world meeting hers, and she embraced it without fear. One evening as they worked, a storm rolled in. The purple sky turned black. Wind howled around the cliff dwelling. Lightning cracked across the sky, bright white against the darkness. The dwelling's protective shields activated automatically, a shimmer of light around the windows and doors. But something went wrong. The shields flickered. Parts of them dropped. Wind and rain began to come through gaps. The glowing plants inside bent under the force. Velmora made an alarmed sound. She rushed to a control panel on the wall. Her hands moved quickly over it, but nothing happened. The shields kept failing. What's wrong? Daesung asked. She gestured frantically. The storm was too strong. The system was old. She needed to reinforce it manually. Tell me what to do, Daesung said. Velmora looked at him, surprised. Then she nodded. She pointed to different parts of the dwelling. She made gestures showing him to apply pressure to certain points where the shields were weakest. They worked in tandem. Velmora manipulated the controls while Daesung used his body to brace weak spots in the physical structure. When one section would fail, they would rush to it together. Her forearms adjusted multiple systems at once. His strength helped hold panels in place while she worked. The storm raged for hours. Rain lashed against the dwelling. Thunder shook the walls. But slowly they managed to stabilize the shields. The gaps closed. The wind died down inside. Finally exhausted, they collapsed together on the floor. They were soaked with rain. Velmora's robes clung to her. Daesung's shirt was plastered to his chest. They were breathing hard, and then Velmora made that bright, quick sound again. Laughter. She looked at Daesung, and her skin rippled with light colors. Joy despite the exhaustion. Daesung started laughing too. They had done it. Together they had protected her home. Their home. Velmora reached out with one hand and placed it on Daesung's shoulder. Not a brief touch this time, but steady and warm. A gesture of thanks, of recognition, of something deeper. We make a good team, Daesung said. Even though she didn't understand the words, she seemed to understand the meaning. She made an agreeing sound. That night, after they had changed into dry clothes and eaten a warm meal, they sat together in the main room. The storm had passed. The shields held strong now. The glowing plants pulsed peacefully. Velmora brought out her weaving materials, but instead of working alone, she gestured for Daesung to join her. She gave him materials and showed him a pattern. They worked side by side, fingers moving in rhythm. Daesung thought about everything that had happened. The crash that should have killed him. Finding Velmora, learning about her loss, the garden, the storm. Each moment had brought them closer. He looked at her as she worked. Her iridescent skin caught the light. Her forehands moved with practiced grace. She hummed softly that musical sound he had come to find comforting. She was alien, completely different from him in almost every way. But somehow that didn't matter. They understood each other where it counted. In the language of work, of shared meals, of quiet evenings, of helping each other through storms, both literal and emotional. Thank you, Daesung said softly, for everything. For saving me, for letting me stay, for sharing your home. Velmora looked up from her weaving. She set it down and moved closer to him. With one hand she touched his face gently. Her touch was warm. Her eyes held his. She spoke in her language, a long, flowing statement. Daesung didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling. She was thanking him too, for helping, for staying, for not being afraid of her grief, for making this place feel less empty. For the first time in 8 years she wasn't alone, and neither was he. The 2 moons rose outside. Their light filtered through the dwelling's windows, casting silver and blue across the floor. The glowing plants pulsed like stars, and 2 beings from different worlds sat together in comfortable silence, weaving threads of connection that grew stronger every day. Daesung knew he should want rescue, should want to go home, but sitting here with Velmora, in this dwelling built into a cliff on a quarantined planet, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt at peace. Outside, The crystal formations caught the moonlight and sang their wind song. The garden slept under the stars. The memorial stones stood their quiet vigil. And inside something new was growing, something neither of them had expected to find: hope. 5 weeks had passed since the crash. Dae-sung's communication device was almost ready. He had salvaged what he could and repaired the damaged components. Just a few more connections and it would be functional. He could send a distress signal. Someone would come for him, but he worked slowly. Each day he found new reasons to delay the final steps. The weather was wrong for transmitting. The power cell needed more charging. The antenna alignment wasn't quite right. Excuses, all of them, he knew it. And he suspected Velmora knew it too. She watched him work on the device each day. Her skin colors shifted in ways he had learned to read. Concern, sadness, but also understanding. She never rushed him. Never made him feel guilty for taking his time. One morning, Dae-sung decided to explore further from the dwelling. He wanted to understand this planet better. Velmora agreed to guide him. They packed water and food and set out across the crystal landscape. The terrain was beautiful in its strangeness. The crystal formations caught light and threw it in every direction. Some crystals were tall as trees, others small as flowers. The purple sky stretched endlessly above them. In the distance, mountains rose sharp and jagged. They walked for hours. Velmora pointed out things along the way. Plants that grew in cracks between crystals, small creatures that burrowed underground. She showed him where water collected in natural basins, pure and clean. Then they came to a place that made Dae-sung stop. A city, or what remained of one. Buildings carved into cliff faces like Velmora's dwelling, but much larger. Streets paved with smooth stone. Plazas where plants now grew wild. Fountains that no longer flowed. Everything was empty, silent. The wind whispered through abandoned spaces. Velmora's skin turned dark blue. She led him through the streets slowly. Her 4 hands touched walls gently as they passed. Remembering. They entered a large building. Inside, the walls were covered in carvings. Images of her people living, working, celebrating. Children playing. Families together. A whole civilization captured in stone. Velmora made a long, musical sound. Mournful. She touched one carving that showed a gathering. Many figures together, all four-armed, all with that iridescent skin. She pointed to herself, then to the carving. She had been there. This was her home before the plague. Dae-sung felt the weight of it. This entire city full of people now empty. Velmora was the last one here. The only keeper of these memories. How many? He asked softly, gesturing to the carvings. How many people lived here? Velmora held up her fingers, trying to show numbers. But eventually she just spread all 4 arms wide. Too many to count. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. All gone. They sat together in the empty building. Velmora began to tell him stories. She pointed to different carvings and spoke in her language. Dae-sung didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. She was keeping her people alive the only way she could. Through stories. Through memory, he listened for hours. When she fell silent, he spoke too. He told her about Earth, about cities filled with humans, about oceans and forests, about his own losses and regrets. Maybe she didn't understand his words either. But like him, she seemed to understand the meaning. They shared their grief in that empty building. 2 survivors from different worlds, both carrying the weight of loss. As they walked back to the dwelling, Dae-sung made a decision. He stopped and gestured for Velmora's attention. He pointed back toward the abandoned city, then to her dwelling, then to himself. I want to help you, he said. I want to help you take care of this place. The memories. Your people's history. You don't have to do it alone anymore. Velmora stared at him. Her skin shifted through several colors rapidly. Surprise, confusion, hope, fear. She made a questioning sound. Why would he do that? Dae-sung touched his chest, then gestured to her. Because you saved me. Because you gave me a home when I had nothing. Because nobody should have to carry this weight alone. She was quiet for a long time. Then slowly she reached out with all 4 hands. She touched his face, his shoulders, his hands. A gesture of deep gratitude in her culture, he realized. An acceptance of his offer. They walked back as the 2 suns began to set. But this time the weight seemed lighter. Shared. That evening, Dae-sung returned to his communication device. He looked at it for a long time. Then he made his choice. He finished the connections. He calibrated the antenna. He powered it on. The device hummed to life. A green light blinked, showing it was ready to transmit. All he had to do was press one button and a distress signal would go out. Within days, maybe a week, a rescue ship would come. Velmora stood in the doorway watching. Her skin was neutral colors, accepting whatever he chose. Daesung's finger hovered over the button. He thought about rescue, about going back to his old life, piloting cargo ships, running from memories, being alone in crowded spaces. Then he thought about the last 5 weeks. The garden, the storms, the quiet evenings, the shared work, Velmora's gentle presence, the peace he had found here. His finger moved away from the button. Instead, he adjusted the settings. He programmed the device to receive signals, not send them. If someone tried to contact him, he would hear it. But he wouldn't be broadcasting his location, not yet. Velmora made a surprised sound. Daesung turned to her and smiled. "I'm not ready to leave," he said. "There's still work to do here. Still things to learn. Still stories to hear." Her skin rippled with bright colors, joy, relief. She approached and took his hands in 2 of hers. She spoke quickly in her language, her voice full of emotion. "I know," Daesung said softly. "I know." The next day, they began a new project. Daesung wanted to document everything. He used his datapad to take pictures of the abandoned city, of the carvings, of the memorial stones, of Velmora's dwelling and garden. Velmora understood what he was doing. He was helping preserve her people's history in a new way, digital records that could be shared beyond this planet someday. She guided him through the city over many days. She showed him important places. She used gestures and drawings to explain what each building had been used for: schools, hospitals, meeting halls, homes. Every street had a story. Daesung recorded everything. He took pictures. He made notes in his datapad. He created a map of the city. It was painstaking work but important. These people deserved to be remembered properly. One afternoon, in a building that Velmora indicated was a library, they found something remarkable. Tablets stacked in rooms, hundreds of them, thousands, all covered in carved symbols. The collected knowledge of her people. Velmora's skin brightened with excitement. She rushed through the rooms, touching tablets carefully. She had known about this place but hadn't visited it in years. Too painful, perhaps. But now, with Daesung beside her, she could face it. Together, they began the enormous task of cataloging the tablets. Daesung photographed each one. Velmora organized them by subject, her forearms working quickly. They spent weeks on this project. Each day, they would travel to the library. They would work until the sun set, then return home. In the evenings, Velmora would try to explain what the tablets said. She drew pictures to help Daesung understand. History, science, art, philosophy, medicine, all of it preserved in stone. "Your people were brilliant," Daesung said one evening. He looked at the photos on his datapad. Thousands of images, a civilization's worth of knowledge. Velmora made a proud sound, then a sad one. "Yes, they were brilliant, but they were gone." "Not gone," Daesung corrected gently. He held up his datapad. "They're here. Their knowledge, their history, their stories. As long as someone remembers, they're not truly gone." Velmora looked at him. Her large eyes were wet, he realized. She could cry, just like humans. Tears rolled down her iridescent cheeks. Daesung did something bold. He reached out and hugged her. It was awkward because of her forearms in different height, but she understood the gesture. She wrapped all 4 arms around him in return, holding him close. They stood like that in the empty library as the sun set. 2 beings from different worlds sharing comfort in the universal language of embrace. That night, back at the dwelling, something shifted between them. The distance that had always existed, that respectful space, began to close. They sat closer during meals. Their hands would brush as they worked. Velmora would touch his shoulder or hand more often, seeking connection. Daesung found himself watching her more, noticing the way her skin changed colors with her emotions, the grace of her movements, the intelligence in her eyes, the strength that had kept her going for 8 years alone. She was beautiful, he realized. Not in a human way, but in her own way. Beautiful in her dedication, her gentle strength, her careful preservation of love and memory. One evening, as they sat outside watching the moons rise, Velmora did something unexpected. She sang, A real song, long and flowing. Her voice carried across the crystal landscape, echoing off the formations. It was the saddest, most beautiful thing Daesung had ever heard. He didn't need to understand the words. He felt the meaning. Loss, love, loneliness, hope, all woven together in music. When she finished, he was crying. Velmora saw his tears and wiped them away gently with one hand. "Thank you," he whispered, "for sharing that with me." She touched her chest, then his. A gesture he had learned meant connection. Shared hearts. Daesung realized something in that moment. He had come to this planet by accident, crashed and broken. He had been saved by an alien weight weeks after the crash. Everything changed. Daesung woke one morning to find Velmora standing by the communication device. She wasn't touching it, just looking at it. Her skin was a complex mix of colors he had never seen before. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting up quickly. She turned to him and made a long sound. Then she pointed to the device, to him, and to the sky. She gestured outward, away from the dwelling. Her meaning was clear. She was asking him about leaving. "I don't want to leave," Daesung said. "I told you that." Velmora made a frustrated sound. She picked up his datapad and showed him the pictures he had taken. The city, the tablets, the memorial stones. She pointed to herself, then to all of it. Then she pointed to him and made a pushing gesture. Daesung finally understood. She wasn't asking him to leave because she wanted him gone. She was asking him to take the knowledge they had collected, to share it with the wider universe, to make sure her people weren't forgotten. "But I can't leave you here alone," he protested. She touched his face with one hand. Her eyes were sad, but determined. She had been alone for 8 years before he came. She could be alone again. But her people's history needed to reach beyond this planet. He was the only one who could do that. Daesung felt torn. She was right, in a way. The knowledge they had gathered was too important to stay on a quarantined planet. But leaving her felt wrong. After everything they had shared, after the connection they had built, how could he just go? He took her hands in his. "Come with me. Leave this place. You've honored your family's memory. You've kept everything safe. But you've given enough. You deserve to live again, not just exist." Velmora pulled her hands away gently. She made a negative sound. She led him outside to the memorial stones. She knelt before them, all 4 arms spread in a gesture of reverence. Then she looked up at Daesung and spoke firmly in her language. He didn't need a translation. Her meaning was clear in every line of her body. This was her vigil, her duty, her choice. She would not abandon her post. They didn't speak much that day. Daesung worked in the garden, his mind churning. Velmora went about her routines, but he could see the sadness in the way her skin stayed dark blue. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, an alarm sounded, a high-pitched tone that made Velmora rush to one of her devices. She looked at the display and her skin went pale. "What is it?" Daesung asked, moving beside her. She showed him the screen. Even though he couldn't read her language, he recognized what he was seeing. A ship, approaching the planet. It would arrive within hours. His communication device suddenly crackled to life. A voice came through, speaking in the common trade language used across space. "Unknown ship that crashed on Quarantine World 77. This is the cargo vessel Dancing Star. We picked up your beacon signature. Are you receiving? Please respond." Daesung's heart sank. The device had been sending out a signal after all. Something he had adjusted wrong. Or maybe it had activated automatically when another ship came into range. Either way, they knew he was here. "This is Daesung," he said into the device. "I'm receiving you. Thank the stars. We thought you were dead. Your ship was reported missing 6 weeks ago. We're coming to get you. Sit tight." The transmission ended. Velmora watched Daesung with those deep violet eyes. Her forearms hung at her sides. She made a soft sound. "It's time. I don't want this," Daesung said. "I'm not ready. But ready or not, rescue was coming." They spent the next few hours in tense preparation. Daesung packed his datapad carefully, making sure all the photos and documentation were secure. He gathered his few possessions. The weaving Velmora had made for him. Some crystals from the landscape. Small things to remember this place by. Velmora moved through the dwelling, touching things. Her loom, the plants, the stone tablets. She was saying goodbye to him in her own way, he realized, memorizing his presence here before it vanished. As the time for the ship's arrival drew close, they went outside together. The two suns were setting, painting the purple sky in orange and red. The crystal formations glowed. The memorial stones stood silent. They walked to the garden one last time. The plants they had tended together were growing strong. New vegetables were almost ready to harvest. The soil was rich and dark. This place would continue even after Daesung left. He knelt and touched the soil. "Thank you for teaching me," he said, "for letting me help you, for giving me purpose when I had none." Velmora knelt beside him. She touched the soil too, then took his hand in two of hers. She spoke in her musical language, a long speech. He heard emotion in every word, gratitude, sadness, something deeper he couldn't quite name. When she finished, Daesung spoke too. "I'm going to share your people's story. I'm going to make sure the whole universe knows they existed, that they were brilliant and beautiful, that they created amazing things, that they were worth remembering." Velmora's skin rippled with bright colors despite her sadness. She understood. "And I'm going to come back," Daesung added firmly. "I don't know when. It might take time to arrange, but I will come back. You won't be alone forever. I promise." She looked at him with surprise. Her skin shifted through several colors. Disbelief, hope, fear of hoping. He took her face in his hands, making her look at him directly. "I promise," he repeated. "This isn't goodbye forever. This is just see you later." A ship appeared in the sky, descending on thrusters. It was a mid-sized cargo vessel, battered but functional. It landed near the crash site, sending up clouds of purple dust. Two people emerged. A man Daesung recognized immediately, Taewon, an old friend and fellow pilot, and a woman in medical uniform probably there to check his health. "Daesung!" Taewon jogged toward them. Then he stopped, seeing Velmora. His eyes widened. "Is that—" "She saved my life," Daesung said quickly. "She's the only one left here. She's been taking care of everything alone." The medical officer, whose name tag read Hana, approached cautiously. She looked at Velmora with professional curiosity. "I need to scan you both. This is a quarantine zone. We need to be sure you're not carrying anything dangerous." She ran her scanner over Daesung first, then gestured to Velmora. Velmora allowed it calmly. The scanner beeped. Hana studied the results. "You're both clean," she said. "Whatever plague was here, it's either gone or you're both immune." Taewon looked at the dwelling in the distance. "You've been living there? All this time?" "Yes," Daesung said. "And there's so much to show you. An entire city, libraries of knowledge, history, art. It all needs to be preserved." He handed his datapad to Taewon. As his friend scrolled through the thousands of photos, his expression changed from confusion to wonder. "This is incredible," Taewon breathed. "An entire civilization. We have to report this. Scientists will want to come here. Historians, linguists." "No," Daesung said firmly. Both Taewon and Hana looked at him in surprise. "Not yet. First, I need to get this information to the right people. People who will treat it with respect, who won't turn this into a tourist attraction or a treasure hunt." He looked at Velmora. She was watching the ship with unreadable eyes. "And I need to arrange proper support for the Guardian who has been protecting all of this. She deserves recognition, resources, help if she wants it, not intrusion." Taewon nodded slowly. "Okay, we can do that, but we need to leave soon. We're low on fuel, and this detour already put us behind schedule." Daesung turned to Velmora, the moment he had been dreading. She looked at him, and her skin was the saddest blue he had ever seen. He pulled out the communication device he had repaired. He showed it to her. "I'm leaving this here. It's set to a private frequency. I'll call you. Every day if I can. And I'll send you equipment, a better translator so we can actually talk. Supplies for the garden, whatever you need." Velomora took the device carefully. She looked at it, then at him. She made a questioning sound. "Really? You'll really come back?" "I swear it," Daesung said. "On everything I have, I will come back." She set down the device and did something unexpected. She pulled him into an embrace, all four arms wrapping around him tightly. She held him like she never wanted to let go. He held her back just as tightly. They stood like that as the two suns disappeared below the horizon, as the stars began to appear, as the two moons rose. Two beings who had found each other across the vast loneliness of space, now being torn apart by circumstance. Finally, they separated. Velomora touched his face one last time. She spoke a single word in her language. He didn't know what it meant, but it sounded like a blessing. Or maybe a prayer. "Come on," Taewon said gently. "We really need to go." Daesung picked up his bag. He walked toward the ship, looking back every few steps. Velomora stood among the memorial stones, all four arms raised in that gesture of blessing he had learned. The moonlight caught her iridescent skin, making her glow. Inside the ship, Hana did a quick medical check while Taewon prepared for takeoff. "You're in good shape," Hana said. "Better than expected, honestly. She took good care of you." "She took great care of me," Daesung corrected, looking out the viewport. The ship lifted off. As they rose into the sky, Daesung watched Velomora get smaller and smaller. She stood there unmoving, watching him leave. The dwelling. The garden. The 6 months passed like years. Daesung spent every day working toward his promise. He contacted universities. He met with xenoanthropologists and linguists. He showed them the pictures, the documentation, the proof of an entire civilization lost to plague. The academic community was amazed, excited. They wanted to send expeditions immediately, but Daesung held firm. He set conditions: no exploitation, no disturbing the memorial sites, respect for the lone guardian who had preserved everything. The scholars agreed, though some reluctantly. He secured funding through a cultural preservation grant. He got permission from the quarantine authorities, convincing them the plague was no longer active. He arranged for supplies, translation equipment, tools for cataloging, everything Velomora might need. Every night he called her on the communication device he had left. The first few weeks he only got static. He worried that the device had failed, that she hadn't figured out how to use it. But he kept calling. Then one night she answered. Her musical voice came through the speaker. She couldn't say words he understood, but he heard the emotion. Relief. Loneliness. Joy at hearing his voice. After that, they talked every night. Daesung would tell her about his progress, about the people he had met, about his plans. She would respond in her language, and even though he didn't understand the words, he understood the feeling. He played her music from Earth. She sang her songs back to him. They shared meals together across the vast distance, eating at the same time while connected by audio. It wasn't the same as being there, but it was something. Daesung also changed in those months. He quit the cargo pilot job. Too much time away from communication range. Instead, he took a position at the university helping to organize the expedition. It paid less, but it kept him close to his goal. Taewon checked on him often. You're really doing this, going back to that planet. For her. For the work, Daesung corrected. But Taewon just smiled knowingly. By the 5th month, everything was ready. A research vessel was prepared. A small team of scientists was selected. Supplies were loaded. Permission was granted. Daesung was officially designated as cultural liaison. His job was to facilitate communication with the Guardian and protect the site's integrity. The night before departure, Dae-sung made his usual call. "Velmora, I'm coming back. Tomorrow we leave. We'll be there in about 3 weeks." Her response was immediate and excited. The musical sounds came rapid and high. She was happy. After all this time, he was returning. "I'm bringing people to help," he warned. "Scientists, they want to study your people's history, but I won't let them disturb anything, I promise." She made a sound that seemed accepting. She trusted him. "I miss you," Dae-sung said quietly. It was true. He missed her gentle presence, her humming, working in the garden together, the peaceful evenings watching the moons rise. "I miss home." Velmora was quiet. Then she spoke one word in the trade language. She had been learning it from the device's translation program. "Home." Dae-sung smiled. "Yes, home." The journey took longer than expected. Delays at checkpoints, a detour around a radiation storm, equipment that needed adjustment. But finally, after 24 days, the planet came into view. Purple sky, crystal formations, 2 suns. "There," Dae-sung pointed to the coordinates. "That's where we land." The ship touched down near the cliff dwelling. As the doors opened and the ramp extended, Dae-sung saw her. Velmora stood outside her home, all 4 arms at her sides. She had changed. Her skin seemed brighter. The dwelling behind her looked more vibrant, plants growing in new places. She hadn't been idle while waiting. Dae-sung walked down the ramp and Velmora met him halfway. They stood looking at each other for a long moment. Then she reached out with all 4 hands and he took them in his. They didn't need words. "I told you I'd come back," he said. She made that bright, quick sound, laughter. Then she pulled him into an embrace. He hugged her back, feeling the warmth of her skin, the strength of her arms. He was home. The scientists emerged from the ship, led by Dr. Bo-Ra, a renowned xenoarchaeologist. She approached cautiously, clearly amazed by Velmora. "This is incredible," Bo-Ra breathed. "To meet the last of her people, the Guardian herself." "Show respect," Dae-sung warned. "She's not a specimen. She's a person who has given 8 years of her life to preserving her culture." Bo-Ra nodded seriously. She approached Velmora with hands extended in a peaceful gesture. Velmora studied her carefully, then made a welcoming sound. She gestured toward the dwelling. Over the next week, they established a base camp. The scientists were respectful, following Dae-sung's guidelines. Velmora gave them a tour of the abandoned city. She showed them the libraries. She indicated which buildings were most important. Through the translation device, she began to communicate basic ideas to them. Dae-sung watched it all with satisfaction. This was what he had wanted. People who appreciated what Velmora had protected. People who would help share her people's legacy with the universe. But the best moments were the quiet ones. When the scientists were busy in the city, Dae-sung and Velmora would work in the garden together just like before. They fell back into their old rhythms effortlessly. He had brought new seeds from Earth and she was excited to plant them. Tomatoes, carrots, herbs, strange plants from another world, growing alongside her native ones. In the evenings, they would sit at the memorial stones. But now sometimes Dr. Bo-Ra or the other scientist would join them. Velmora would tell stories through the translator device. The scientists would record them carefully. Her people's history was finally being documented in a language others could understand. One evening, after everyone else had gone to sleep, Dae-sung and Velmora sat alone watching the moons. The translation device sat between them. "Thank you." Velmora's translated voice came through. The device made her sound mechanical, not capturing the music of her real voice. "For coming back, for bringing help, for keeping promise." "I told you I would," Dae-sung said. "I don't break my promises." "Why?" she asked. The device translated the question simply, but he heard the complexity in her actual voice. Why had he done all this? Why had he cared so much? Dae-sung thought about how to answer. "Because you gave me something when I needed it most. You gave me a home, purpose, peace. You showed me that life continues even after loss, that beauty can exist alongside grief. Velmora was quiet. Then she spoke directly, not through the translator. Her musical voice carried across the quiet landscape. Then she used the device. You gave me same. First person in 8 years. Made dwelling feel like home again, not just place of sadness. Daesung reached out and took one of her hands. I was thinking. The scientists want to establish a permanent research station here. To study everything properly, it will take years. Yes, the translator said for her. I applied to be the station director. I got the position. Daesung looked at her carefully. It means I would stay here, live here, permanently, help coordinate the research, help you maintain the memorial sites, if that's okay with you. Velmora's skin shifted through a rainbow of colors. Surprise, joy, disbelief, hope, all at once. She made several rapid sounds too quick for the translator to keep up. But Daesung understood. Is that a yes? He asked, smiling. She nodded vigorously, a gesture she had learned from him. Then she threw all 4 arms around him and held him close. He hugged her back, laughing. There's something else, he said when they separated. The university wants to recognize you officially, give you a position, guardian and chief cultural consultant. You would be paid, given resources, authority over what can and can't be studied. Velmora tilted her head, processing this through the translator. Then she made a sound of understanding. They were honoring her work, her vigil, giving it official importance. You deserve it, Daesung said. 8 years alone, preserving everything. You're a hero, Velmora. Your people would be proud. Her skin turned a soft, warm blue. A color he had learned meant deep emotion. She touched the memorial stones beside them. Then she touched Daesung's face. She spoke without the translator, and he heard the meaning even without understanding the words. Her people were proud, and she was grateful for everything. The next few months transformed the site. More scientists arrived. Proper equipment was installed. The city was being carefully documented and preserved. The libraries were being cataloged with Velmora's help. Her language was being decoded and taught. Her people's knowledge was being shared with the wider universe. But the dwelling remained private. Daesung made sure of that. It was still Velmora's home. His home now, too. The scientists had their base camp a distance away. When they came to the dwelling, it was by invitation only. Daesung and Velmora's routine evolved. They still tended the garden together. Now it was bigger, producing food for the whole research team. They still sat at the memorial stones in the evenings. But sometimes they would talk about the future instead of the past. Velmora was learning the trade language better every day. Their conversations grew more complex. She told him about her partner, her child, how they had lived, what they had been like. She cried sometimes and Daesung would hold her. But the tears weren't just sadness anymore, they were healing. He told her more about Earth, about his own losses,